Welcome to yet another edition of Dissecting Horror. I'm your host, Josh Milliken, and today we're spending an evening with the creatives behind Hunter x Hunter, a brand new, brutal thriller releasing this Friday, December 18th on VOD through IFC Midnight. We're going to get into this film in depth, but I've just got to say it's making it right under the wire to qualify for one of the spots on just about everyone's top 10 horror movies of 2020 list. It definitely earned a spot on mine. It's a fantastic film, and we're going to watch the trailer to give you a peek, and you're going to see why this film is really dynamite.
This is a hard life. You chose it and it suits you. I chose it when I chose you. Renee never had a choice.
What do you do if you see something?
Don't run. The wolf is back. Ate a raccoon and left the paw.
This isn't a normal wolf.
It's just a hungry wolf looking for an easy meal. I will catch it.
What is that?
It's a ring.
The wolf ate a ring?
Maybe it was attached to something that tasted good.
What, like a finger?
Where did she say she found this?
Out in the woods.
Hello?
Jesus.
There's a killer out there.
My advice is to move your family to the woods.
Get behind me! What if we can't make it out before the freeze?
We don't run from our troubles.
You heard it, right?
We don't get a lot of people out here.
That's what makes it so special.
Nothing pushes us out of our home.
I'm worried about Dad.
Renee says she heard a gunshot.
We've got a blood trail.
Your husband wanted to catch a wolf. Is that what he told you?
Stay in this room until I come get you. Say you understand! I understand!
You want to snag a wolf? You gotta out-wolf him.
There you have it, Hunter x Hunter, releasing this Friday, December 18th through IFC Midnight. You better see this before you think you've seen the top 10 horror movies of 2010, because there's something incredible about Hunter x Hunter. Hunter x Hunter is a movie filled with twists. There are secrets that shall not be revealed here, but we can still talk about these secrets to further tantalize you. But let me introduce you to the guests, to our panelists. I'm here with Shawn Linden, the writer and director of Hunter x Hunter, hailing from Manitoba, Canada. How you doing?
Very well, Josh. Thank you for having us all.
Oh, fantastic. Can't wait to do a deep dive on Hunter x Hunter, talk about this amazing film, what it took to bring it to fruition, and your thoughts on how it's being received so far. We've also got Greg Nicod, director of photography. Welcome, Greg.
Hey guys, welcome down. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks for being here. Hunter x Hunter, as you can just tell from the trailer, is a very lush film. There's a lot of there's a cinematic language at work there, so it's awesome to have you here to talk about what you did to contribute to the story, so much of which is unspoken and unsaid and unshown. More on that later. Great to have you here. We've got Kevon Cronin, the composer. How are you, Kevin?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. And just like I was saying, a lot about Hunter x Hunter is unseen. That puts a lot of pressure on the person scoring this film. There are a lot of moments of extreme tension where, the mind is left to wonder what's going on, and you're left to fill those spaces. An important job in a film like this one. So welcome. glad to have you
Thanks
here.
so much.
Last but not least, Camille Sullivan, wonderful Canadian actress. Welcome, Camille.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. There are a lot of films, when we talk about certain films, you talk about like that scene. There's, you talk about a movie and you say that scene and people know exactly what you're talking about. Hunter x Hunter has one of those where it's going to be like those who've seen it talk about that scene, and you're a part of that. Destined to become, I think, a really iconic moment in the genre. You've earned yourself a nice little mention there in horror history for sure.
Oh, that's very flattering. Thank you.
I can't wait
That's
to talk
awesome.
to you more about your character, Anne, and more about what it took to bring this film to life. Some incredibly emotional performances. You and Devon and Nick all give some really just nothing held back performances. We're going to talk about what it took to go to those places, and we're going to, not spoil anything, but we're going to talk about lots of things that are going to make people more excited to see this film for themselves when it comes out this Friday. Welcome, everyone. So glad you could be here. I'm going to let Shawn kick it off because one of the things we were talking about in Tech Check, something I learned is that this film was more than 10 years in the making, and we could probably spend the entire hour just talking about this film's saga. But Shawn, can you kind of give us the Cliff's Notes and talk about the highlights of this film's journey from inception to release this Friday?
Well, it was written back in 2007, back when I was on a plane back from Germany and or back from Belgium, headed towards home from a film festival for my first movie, and we got stuck in Frankfurt from a snowstorm and had to. All of the hotels were all filled up from all of the airplanes being grounded, and I got carted out on a bus into like some kind of picturesque mountainside resort that had to go through a bunch of misty, beautiful trees, and I passed through that forest and looked through the trees, and somehow that kind of there are a bunch of disparate elements of my views on eating meat and my love of the really old bloody fairy tales, and all those kinds of things just started to roll together into one, under that kind of image of the misty trees. And by the time I'd come back home from that film festival, the spine of the story had been written, and it had gone through 12 years of rewriting, and every year would get real close to being made, and would have some kind of setback that would be like, oh, okay, the next year. And it underwent a whole bunch of revisions and became and kind of evolved through the years, but never really lost that the original soul and spine of the story. And eventually that's what it all boiled down to. Everything else was discarded except for all of the things that hopefully makes the story unique. And that's how it happened. Got a call out of the blue from Neil Elman, who was a longtime collaborator who I hadn't heard from in a decade. And we had enjoyed the script 10 years ago together, and he had never forgotten it. And kind of called out of the blue and said, if we can get this going, then he can get this going. So we got this going.
Fantastic. Now, Shawn, you wrote and directed this film, which I always think is such an impressive feat, which is centered around this family living a very remote, rugged lifestyle. Do you have any experience in that realm of off-the-grid living, deep forests?
No way. I'm a house cat. I don't I've done a lot of research on it because I had to, and throughout the years I had enough time to do it. But yeah, and since then I've gone hunting a couple of times just to feel it, I guess. But yeah, all of that's just done with research. That's the fun thing with being a screenwriter, is that you can kind of devote a few weeks out of your life to learning something that has nothing to do with your regular life, and to suddenly become no longer a lay person at that. Not an expert. I'm not an expert at trapping or survivalism or any of those things by any stretch of the imagination, but I can fake it for 90 minutes.
You did an excellent job of faking it, because these characters and, the way they were, tracking, because they did more than just hunt, they were tracking, and they were harvesting the meat themselves, and there was something about that, that they had their a completely self-contained world to themselves, really interesting in this era specifically. Another rabbit hole we could just tumble down, but really interesting stuff. I'll circle back on some of this in a minute, but I wanted to talk to Greg for a minute, director of photography. It's interesting. Shawn described the story as bones, and I agree. The Hunter is almost like a skeleton in some ways, because it allows you to fill in a lot in your own mind. There's a lot of breathing room in Hunter in the beginning, especially. How did you tell me about your approach to the visual language of this film?
The visual language, it was pretty interesting. I mean, working with Shawn is always fun because we had so much stock in before every scene we shot. We had a lot of brainstorming on the day, and then Shawn had a very specific idea in his mind how he wanted some things, but our collaboration and our journey on the movie brought us to actually exchange a lot before the scene and try to create on the spot, which was kind of a creativity, openness, from Shawn. And so we were basically making every shots on the spot, by talking, or sometimes by trying, and then just figure it out, like evolving. That was a constant evolution every time we were shooting one scene. And we always wanted to reach the best way to tell the story. And that's why the movie became a lot of, sequential shot, like wonders, and it moves all along. So trying to find, the best way to actually make the scenes, but in a way that we don't spoil or waste the story. So the decision of making something very livable, moving all the time, it's the result of our long discussions.
Fascinating, fantastic. Well, cool. Let me pivot over to Camille for a minute, for more than a minute actually, because there's so much to discuss. Your role is so pivotal to the entire story, and again, I don't want to give anything away, but your character is really the linchpin. You see a lot of Devon Sawa in the trailer, but you're as important, and this couldn't have been an easy project for you because your character goes to some real extremes. I love the line that was shared in the trailer, and I don't feel bad about spoiling it here, where you talk about your character didn't choose that life, or she did kind of tangentially. Devon Sawa's character chose to live the life of a trapper. You chose to be his wife, and therefore indirectly you chose that life as well. There's so much struggle just in that description right there, and then you're constantly looking out for your daughter, who had no choice in the matter whatsoever. Can you just talk a little bit about your approach to this very complicated character?
Before I started, I had a good talk with Shawn about I asked him what he wanted me to think about when I was preparing it. And he sort of put me on a good path, which was this transformation that she goes through, and sort of thinking of her, I might be remembering this wrong, but this is how I remember. Thinking of her as someone who finds the strength she needs to, right? So I think through the movie, she just keeps getting challenged and challenged and challenged, and to keep her family safe, she just has to continue to find that strength and meet that new challenge. And every time she does it, she loses a little bit of her softness and changes and changes and changes until she gets to sort of the ultimate, kind of loses herself.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, the transformation is there, and you know, one of the things I love about the title Hunter Hunter is that, you know, it could actually be called, again, I don't think this is a spoiler, it could be called Hunter 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 Hunter, because there's more than one hunter, there's more than one fur trapper, and there's more than one thing to fear. That, you know, there's more than just a wolf to fear out there. And even characters who might have entered the picture in a prey role become hunters. And that's certainly something that Anne does. She becomes a hunter through necessity and her desire to protect.
Yeah, I think that exactly. Through her desire to protect, I think in the first place is having this lifestyle and protecting her daughter and thinking, okay, well, if we're here and we're away from society, we're safe. But you can't hide because the danger will come find you sort of wherever you are.
That's right, it will. And you know, that's goes to a lot of the movie, a lot of the character's motivations, yours and the character played by Devon Sawa. I'm going to pivot over to Kevin for a minute, because you were talking about how Hunter x Hunter is almost like a skeleton in terms of the ideas in the original script. It was stripped down to the bones. The cinematic landscape is very open. How did was that also true in your approach to scoring this film? Do you feel like you had the same sort of approach?
Very much so. I mean, I had a conversation early on with Shawn where I asked, you know, what is this film about? And, you know, he really boiled it down to, it's an ode to the predatory spirit. You know, something very, very primal, very basic. And I thought, well, okay, that's totally going to inform the score of the film. And so I had to kind of brainstorm and come up with a musical language that could live in this film. And it didn't have to do a whole lot, because, you know, the story was really strong, the acting was great, the cinematography was fantastic. And so it just kind of had to coexist with the film and bring out some of the emotions and a little bit of movement, but really it was to just kind of to move things along. It didn't need prominence because everything was so strong.
Yeah, again, you're almost talking like the soundtrack was just kind of bones in that sense too, because the story itself was so powerful. And I love that idea that Hunter x Hunter just represents what was stripped away from a very complicated story, presented in a very straightforward way, because the end result is so powerful. You know, I recall asking myself I'm sorry, I'm a stoner, so I forget things, but what was Devon's character in the film? What was his name?
Joseph.
Joseph. You know, the first time when I'm first watching it, you know, I'm like, why doesn't he call the police? You know, there are several occasions when he could have, and there's one occasion where I think most people would argue that he should have.
Got no phone. He has no phone. Who's he gonna go? Where is he gonna call?
Jump in his car. I don't want to give anything away.
He can't drive. You're already presuming things that are.
Well, you are, and that's the thing. You know, most films would include an exposition to explain why Joseph isn't going to call the police. And
we only have 92
bit.
minutes.
Well,
we only got 92 minutes.
I mean, some people would say you could spend 15 seconds on dialogue to say, like, look, I'm the kind of guy who, you know, I have to take care of everything, and that means protecting my family and being the police of the land if that's what it takes. So that explains some of it. You didn't do that, though. You instead showed that in the way he acts and in his reactions and in him. You know, we're talking about Devon. You know, I wish he was here, not just because, you know, he's such an accomplished actor with such a great filmography. He did such a complex role. I mean, it really seems like he's turned a corner. I've seen him in, you know, play some very, you know, adult roles. The Fanatic, you know, he was very adult. You know, he's come a long way since Idle Hands. But I'm looking at him in Hunter x Hunter, and I'm like, you are of age. You know, you are a man in this, and there's nothing sweet and fluffy about this character and this actor. So just to all of you who had the opportunity, what was it like working with Devon?
It was great. He was like very open to talking about the scenes before we did them and just like figuring out kind of how we would be as a couple, and if there was kind of a shorthand that we could communicate with, like, because the dialogue was well, no, that's not right. It's because the way that couples communicate is largely without dialogue. So we're kind of trying to figure out how our dynamic worked outside of that as well. And so it was super cool. It was really fun.
Yeah, he was awesome. He was in on it from the very start, just like Camille and Summer and Nick. He was really in and wanting to get into his character and wanting to make sure that this stuff looked more than effortless, that it looked really commonplace and just everyday. And Camille and Devon both really looked for that authenticity, and it seems like they found it in spades.
Absolutely. Greg,
yeah,
anything to add?
No, I mean, for me, it was like, it was super easy to work with, very professional, and that makes our job a lot easier when you deal with such great actors like Camille too. She's like, and she's been doing crazy stuff for me, and it's always fun and interesting to deal with good actors, who are willing to do anything, for the screen, for the movie, because honestly, it takes a lot of your mind, and you just concentrate on doing your job perfectly. And I think they all did, like from Summer, Nick, Camille, and Devon. They all been fantastic and devoted to that movie. So it made really my job a lot easier.
You're right that the entire cast was fantastic. And you mentioned Nick too, another actor who we've seen since he was playing roles as a teenager, who now is playing a role as, this mountain man. Can't give too much away about good old Nick, but what was it like working with him? Anyone?
I'll say he was a very good sport. I got to manhandle him a lot, and he's a very good sport about it.
Spoilers, but yeah, totally.
A small spoiler.
Nick was actually really great for me once he got on. First off, because he got on, he came on halfway through shooting, just because of the schedule of the shoot, and we had a lot of time with the family together, or a lot more time before we got to start shooting with the family than we did with Nick, who kind of just showed up as a stranger, as he kind of does in the film. And it became a really reassuring fact. He used to stay on set. People would go back to their trailers and try to get their minds off of the muck they just had to go through. And Nick would kind of always just he would sit on set and not really he would stay out of the way and just observe stuff, just because he was he's a filmmaker himself. And it was always just kind of reassuring, or it brought really a familial warmth to just be looking around as Greg and I were setting up for shots, and just seeing like Nick just sitting there on the couch, just kind of being quiet and watching things. And anytime I could walk up to him and discuss his character, it was just, it brought a really good vibe to the set once he arrived. Not that the vibe wasn't awesome throughout. It was just he brought a different and unique one.
Well, it's an intense film. It's an extreme film, so it doesn't surprise me that you could all benefit from a cool character like that. It's great to hear that he contributed, both on camera and off camera by his participation, by his collaboration. That's fantastic. I keep coming back to the idea of bones ever since you said that about the story. And so much of Hunter x Hunter is showing but not showing, telling but not telling. In terms of the violence and the gore, it's extreme. Several parts of it are very extreme. And at the same time, some of the most extreme elements are never shown, Can you address that a little bit, Shawn? I mean, when you're not pulling any punches, how do you then decide what you're gonna pull back from?
Well, that was the strategy from the start with the writing, is that the film, if it were to show everything, would be a lot more viscerally extreme than it was. But I don't know if it would have as much power, because the minute you restrain things, it's like my dad never swore his entire, or as I was growing up. So the minute he said "fuck," you were like, Jesus, that's how that word is supposed to sound. Like, holy smokes! It's because you've chosen to restrain yourself the whole time, that once it does happen, then it's all the more shocking. And I don't want to give away the movie in writing the script, it was trying to kind of duplicate. I thought, well, how does it feel to step into a trap, like a hunting trap?
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned a hunting trap, because it's a literal and figurative danger in this case.
Well, that's it. And hopefully the story does that. It kind of, what you would do if you were to step into one of those things. And incidentally, we were shooting in places where apparently those traps were laid down, like ankle traps were laid down, because we were in hunting territory. So we had a poor location PA who had to go out and like mine sweep the area for foot traps.
True.
But the structure of the story is like if you were to walk into a trap, you're first either not suspecting much danger, or you're diverted to something else before it snaps shut, and then your whole world changes. Like everything changes. And that's kind of what the structure of the story is, hopefully, if that makes any sense.
Makes sense to me. I've seen the film. Well, fantastic. Yeah, and it's an incredible film. It's an incredible film. I'm going to turn to some audience questions right now while I just kind of take it all in. This has been great. Let me see here. We got one for Kevin. How would you describe the score of the film?
Well, from the first conversation that I had with Shawn about having an ode to the predatory spirit, I wanted to create a sound world that was kind of stark, that was minimalist, but still had its own identity to it. So I was lucky enough to work with a great cellist out of Eastern Canada named Norm Adams, and we developed a kind of musical language of focusing on slow movement. I didn't want a whole lot of warmth to the sound, so there were certain techniques that I made him record for me. And so we tracked a whole bunch of material, and I was able to bring it back to the studio and slowly craft things to work with the film, and get feedback from Shawn, and so it was, I would say it was minimalist and stark to kind of match those the feelings of the film.
Fantastic. Is the film is the soundtrack gonna be released?
Not that I'm aware of yet. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, it'd be great to see that at least on vinyl or something. Great work, very unnerving. Worked in perfect congruity with the film and the cinema. So well done. Camille, this is a good one. It's asking about what attracted you to the role of Anne, and I was wondering that myself, because you've been doing this for a minute. You've been acting for a while. A lot of people start out in horror. You've done horror, but you've done all kinds of films and television. So you could choose horror or not. So something must have drawn you to do something this extreme when that's not like what defines you.
I was really attracted to the physicality of it. Like when I was first reading the script, my agent sent it to me, and I was only like 10, 15 pages in, and she's like carrying buckets of water and running with them. I'm like, fucking yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to be running in the woods and like pulling heavy things. And then as I read it, then I saw also like the emotional journey she goes on. It's also so fucking intense. So then altogether it appealed to all the things, like the part of me that wanted to really be like macho, and then also the part of me that really wanted to get deep emotionally.
Fantastic, fantastic. Here's one for you, Greg, and it's interesting because it's something I wouldn't have necessarily thought about. But it mentions that the film takes place in the woods, where
Yeah.
shadow might have been a problem with the sun changing throughout the day. Was that an issue, and did that change your approach?
It's actually funny because if you look in the entire movie, it's actually not sunny at all. There's only one scene we had sun. We were pretty lucky. We had a lot of overcast days or perfect, weather and clouds, to shoot with. And we were like so,
Don't
so
tell him
lucky.
which day, Greg. Don't tell him which day.
No, but we were really happy, and because the continuity worked perfectly, till one day, and then one day we had a burst of, of sun, actually 2 days, but and then you see it in the movie, but it was at the cabin and not in the woods. And we had sun sometimes, just play the sun in the movie and see it clearly sometimes when he walks. It's fun. I mean, shooting in woods and shadows doesn't matter. It's natural light, it's how it is in life, and I didn't do much work in trying to recreate natural light or try to bounce back the shadows. I just embraced whatever nature will give me, and that's also to be realistic and to keep the more realistic look for the movie. So I don't know if it answers the question, but
That was fascinating.
yeah, I didn't mind the
Absolutely.
shadows, and it wasn't an issue. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm going to go back to you, Shawn. This goes back to one of the things we were talking about in Tech Check, which I thought was really interesting. You were saying that you would almost prefer that people see Hunter x Hunter without having seen the trailer. And then we kicked off this panel by showing everyone the trailer. Can you delve into that a little bit, talking about what you think the trailer says and what you think is important about the story?
I just think that it's generally the scripts that I write for myself are always ruined by telling people the premise, because it always tries to, like, the minute you get past the 20 or minute 20 in the movie, you're already kind of, ideally you're giving away things that I would, as a filmmaker, I'd prefer you didn't. Like, I understand the need for trailers and things like that, and like I said, the trailer is awesome. It's great, and it makes you want to see the movie. But if I had my druthers, it's never ever going to happen, because it goes against publicity and things like that.
You got to market it.
Yeah, well, it's ultimately, hopefully this gets word of mouth and people just say, like, just watch the movie. Don't even read the synopsis. Just sit down and turn off the lights and turn it on.
So if it was up to you, then would you give people no preface whatsoever about seeing this? If someone just came to you and said, Shawn, what do I need to know before I go into seeing this movie? Would you say just see it?
Well, I mean, I'm realistic. I know that answers are only a touch away. It's not really. It's the floodgates are open already, and the movie kind of hasn't been released, and I'm all good with that. Like, especially in times of COVID, where publicity and getting movies out there are a completely different kind of, it's a different landscape that nobody else has worked in before. It's all just kind of uncharted territory. So I'm happy with whatever makes people see the film. And it doesn't matter, like, I don't know if the ending, even if you know what happens at the end, I don't know if that takes much power away from it, because of we've tried our best to put some care and significance into how things resolve themselves.
Yeah, well, I think people will be satisfied. It's more than a film with an awesome ending. It's more than a film with a twist. It's a film with several twists or big realization moments, really exciting moments of discovery for the audience. So I don't think that there will be any problem where that is concerned. We grab another question here. This is for Camilla, and it might be obvious to those of us who have seen it, but what was the most difficult scene for you to film?
But there's just no good way for me to answer that. There's just no good way. There was a very difficult scene in it where I just was panicked about it through the whole time, just really, really afraid to shoot it. I can't tell you what it was, but yeah, I was freaking out about it. Basically, because we shot mostly in order. So I was looking forward to it kind of the whole time we were shooting.
Wow. Well, something else occurred to me when you were answering just now. Did you guys work with a real wolf? Was that, CGI wolf? Let's talk wolf.
Nisa, her name was Nisa, and she's magnificent.
Yeah. So you guys got to meet this wolf and interact with this wolf?
Yeah, Greg and I. Greg, you want to?
No, go. You know that story pretty well. I mean,
are you sure? Nisa, she's beautiful. She was a black wolf, and she lived with her sister in a habitat that was in Alberta, and was tended to by a beautiful bunch of people. Like, the trainers were awesome, and we got to go down there and film Nisa, and it wound up being like a composite shot. We shot Camille and Summer in her scene first, and then on our last day we flew down, just Greg and I, to go and film this wolf. And she was gorgeous, man. If you've ever seen a real wolf, they are freaking like the majesty of those things. They're like lions. The head was almost the size of my torso, and these yellow eyes that are just so piercing. But this thing had, you can't train a full-on wolf. There's no such thing as a trained wolf. There's such thing as a trained, 95% wolf and 5% dog. They'll do things that they can be trained to do stuff, but a real wolf can just be kind of persuaded to do things that it wanted to do. So it was like an ultra intelligent animal that they had to trick constantly. That we had to, the hard part about all that is compositing all of its movements into a scene that we had done on a rocky shore. And so we had to kind of corral this, essentially a wild chill animal, or not really even chill. It was all over the place. It was hilarious, but we had to corral it.
Yeah, we had to adapt our the way to shoot the animal, because the animal wouldn't do what exactly we wanted to. So we just had to shoot in hope for the animal to actually do something would be useful for us in the movie. And I think that was the challenge of that day.
It would have they'd have to fence them off, because if we'd have to make the movement with a camera aimed at it, we'd have to fence it off with electric wire, but the electric wire was never charged. They would just make sure that the wolf is looking, they'd point at it and they go hot. So the Nisa understood that, or was tricked into thinking that this was a hot wire. And that worked for the most part, but that's really the operative part of that sentence, is for the most part. And there was a lot of fun and really significant moments that happened when Nisa realized that we were just lying about that.
Oh, so she figured it out.
Yeah. And for a split moments, you got to see what a wolf is all about. And it was awesome. It was great. It came right at me. I was trying to hug it. I didn't know what else to do. It came bouncing. The trainers they're the best people on earth, but for God's sakes, they were both 5'3", really rough and tumble ladies that knew how to take care of business. But it's a giant wolf, and the minute it got out of it, the minute it realized that it wasn't electrified, it just started digging underneath the fence and just popped up, and they were just dry, and it bounded around and tried to, it came right at me, and I didn't know what else to do, so I just tried to hug it and just went, hi, and just suddenly just bounded away at the last minute.
Please don't eat me.
And hit this thermos and just crunched this metal thermos.
My God.
Can.
Did you get any of it on camera, behind the scenes, DVD extras?
No, I knew you would ask, but no, the camera was not pointing in that direction at that point.
Wow.
We were actually kind of all scared, we didn't know how we would react, it's still a trained wolf, but so we were watching,
I mean, it could have turned into Tiger King very quickly. It would have been a whole
Exactly.
different movie if that had happened.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, the camera was not rolling in that direction.
But that's why he says
bummer.
She was an awesome animal, and so like it was such a joy to have crossed paths with her. It's a time that Greg and I will for sure never ever forget.
No, that was a good last day on the movie. Our last day was just cherry on top. Shooting with a wolf was an amazing experience.
Camille, did you have any sweet Nisa memories?
I didn't ever interact with the wolf. I just shot myself with the green screen. Yeah.
Because you never doubt that you aren't just feet away. That's incredible to hear.
That's good.
Yeah, no, congratulations. Well, Kevon, I know you weren't there, but how did you score? How was it scoring these scenes with a live wolf? And were there any specific musical signatures to the wolf's appearances?
Yeah, I mean, in a movie like this, you can't make a kind of an overt theme, per se that one might think of. You need to create something that lives in that world, and so I created kind of a sonic signature for the wolf that you can kind of hear throughout that hints at it. You may or may not see the wolf, but it's there. So if you're listening for those sounds, you kind of know subliminally that it's around. And I always wanted to hint at it. You may or may not see it, and play with those ideas of expectation and whatnot to create the tension.
Fantastic. There have been a few times throughout this panel where I've kind of lost my train of thought isn't exactly the right term, but I've kind of gotten stuck. And it's not because I've lost my train of thought. It's because there's so much to talk about in this film, and there's so much better left undiscussed until you've seen it. This is one of the trickiest panels I've ever moderated, because it's like, if we had just screened it at a film festival, and if we were standing in front of a room of people who knew this film's secrets, I would love to delve into some of the really wonderful moments of this film, but I have to really just contain myself, and I have to just kind of like squash those urges at this point. But I really do hope people see this film, and I can't wait to talk about it once the wolf is out of the bag, to mix my puns. Let's move on to some more questions here before we start wrapping things up. Greg, people are really interested in your process. Someone else is asking, did you gravitate more towards handheld or dolly shots, and why?
That's an excellent question, and then Shawn can rely on that one. Actually, the handheld part, we have obviously handheld in the movie, but I was not intending as much as we wanted to. We didn't want to use handheld too much. It happened because sometimes it's just faster and you're in the wood and you don't have time. And we were working with a very small crew, hardworking guys, all amazing. But sometimes, you lack time and you need to go faster. So handheld was just like the safe choice for that part. But we stuck to one idea, is to make the movie moving all the time, the camera moving all the time. And we did create dolly shots, not necessarily with the dolly, because there again, sometimes you have to be creative. But we used all kinds of equipment and try to make it move. Like we used an old jib, we used a Dunnet dolly, which is pretty much indie, 101 kind of equipment you use. But yeah, it was mostly something more cinematic, static, moving towards the scene, towards the character, telling something. It's constantly movement. And in the process, I think in the filming process, it makes stuff a little bit harder sometimes, because when you try to move and make it 1 hour, it takes time. It takes a lot of takes. I don't know if Shawn can tell the story, but we went sometimes 12, 14, 17 times. Camille can actually rely on it too. So, sometimes you had to run like 12 times or 14 times because we didn't get it. Technically it was hard for everybody, like trying to make that perfect moving shot, But I think, yeah, that was the idea. I don't know, Shawn, what you think, but I think the idea was to get something steady, more cinematic Dolly-ish kind of shots. Yeah.
Yeah, we had to, or we wound up playing up kind of the like I said, I've always kind of thought of it as Kevin nails it pretty well as an ode to the predatory spirit, but also the fairy tale aspect. I wanted to give a bit of a kind of a fairy tale about predators vibe to it, and so we were hoping, Greg and I were hoping to give it kind of a lyrical quality to the movement of the story, and have the movement really play part of the storytelling. And whenever the camera wasn't moving, there was a really good reason for it, and it plays up an effect. It goes back to the thing we were talking about earlier, that if you never see something happen the first time that it appears, it pops out, even if it's the absence of something, like the absence of movement. But that was the idea, was to give it kind of a fairy tale-ish timeless quality, and part of that was adding to the movement. And we ran into, like Greg was saying, we had a week where suddenly our Dolly was no longer available because of a production mishap or a rental mishap. So Greg had to go into his bag of tricks, and we had to lean hard on that Dana Dolly and things like that, just to make sure that everything matched for that week, that we got everything still in that kind of nice, gentle, purposeful movement, so that week wouldn't stand out from the rest of the movie. So yeah.
We had to get creative most of the time, to create some shots. And there's, I mean, it's not spoiling the movie, but there's one shot I'm not proud of, because it's actually not the right way to do it. But I was, just to explain the kind of, issues we were running into. Like, we were shooting in a small cabin, and we had planned a shot when the camera moves back from the sofa, where Camille and Renee, they're having a lecture, and then pull back to immerso, so Devon Sawa making his cigarettes. And there's, if you think about Hollywood and all this kind of stuff, the only way to do this is to use a technocrane, but you're shooting an indie movie, you don't have a technocrane. There's no way we can achieve that kind of shots, And we turn around to your guys, and you're just like, what do we have? We have, pipes, and we have that skateboard dolly you put on pipes, and you got a very old Weaver Stedman, which is a special fluid head, but from the 70s. And you're like, let me think, maybe we can do something about it. And it took us half an hour and a few sandbags, and it looks horrible when you look at it, but the shot works, and we created this kind of shot, which is like, hey, and that's, I think, in the entire process of the filming this movie, we've been encountering, these kind of troubles or issues, but we always solve them by being, inventive, smart. And Shawn he was really good sport with it. He was like, oh yeah, sure. I mean, if it works, it works. Who cares the way you do it? It just get the shot done. And it's
it was more fun the weirder we got. Like
exactly.
The day that we got to drive over our only camera with a truck was one of my favorite days. Yeah, when the rangers scooped up an animal, dead animal in the ground, that shot was just like, yeah, we're gonna dig a hole in the road, on the dirt road. I just put the camera there and hope for the truck to be high enough. And yeah, it was scary. It actually worked. It is our only camera. We're out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Our only camera, and we put it like inches from the clearance of this car as it was coming by. It was so fun.
That's awesome. Go big or go home,
Yeah, it's part of making movies. It's just, sometimes you got to be audacious and you dare to do some kind of shots. And that was a crazy shot. That was probably a fun shot for both of us. We really wanted to do it, and we achieved it, and it's in the movie. So it's like, yeah, it's a win-win.
Fantastic. Let's squeeze in a couple more questions from the audience questions here. Got another one for a few for Kevin. So I'm gonna hit you up with two. Someone's curious about how many minutes of music you did for the film. And someone else is asking, what was your favorite scene to score?
So number of minutes of music, I mean, there was quite a bit. It wasn't like, sometimes there's just like something very light going on in the background. So It wasn't overly complex in certain spots, whereas in others, I felt like I really got to make a statement. So I'd say there's probably, I'm guessing 40, 50 minutes of music, more or less, which is, pretty standard. My favorite scene to score, it's going to be hard for me to say without giving anything away.
Was it that scene?
No.
I'm interested in this too. I want to know.
That scene was great. That was one of the things after I watched the film for the first time was, do I need to score that scene? I'm like, I don't. Okay, I'm all right, because I got queasy. It would be difficult, very difficult. But one of my favorite scenes, what can I say, takes place in the woods. Big surprise there. Involves a police officer running through the woods. And it's funny because I felt like I got to make a fairly bold statement with really minimal elements in that scene. And I was like, oh, I hope Shawn likes this one, and this is my favorite one. I'd love it to be in there. So yeah, to look for there's a good scene with a police officer in the woods. That's all I'll say.
I know the scene you're talking about, and it is a good scene. It's a good scene. Well, fantastic. Camille, I think I'll give you the last audience question here. It's kind of a hybrid of two questions I read. What did you do to build yourself up for some of the more emotionally challenging scenes in Hunter x Hunter? And then was it difficult to turn off afterwards?
Yeah, that's a good question. What did I do? I don't know what I did. What I always do to build up for the emotional scenes is I just try to come up with an idea. I kind of work thematically more than realistically. So I kind of come up with a theme for me that suits the scene, like one little idea or notion that I just drop in my head just before we go. And then that kind of, usually if it's the right thing, it'll just kind of start that engine, and then I just try to let it go. And it was hard to turn off. I mean, certainly by the last night, I don't know, we worked such a long day, and I was so tired, and I was flying out the next morning, and I just lay in my bed, like vibrating, like, go to sleep. And I just could not at all until, I slept like 2 hours.
Yeah, that was a long day.
Well, all your hard work paid off, because people are going to be talking about that scene for years to come. What are you working on now?
I just finished doing a little recurring role on the show Big Sky for ABC.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about it.
I play, it's already started. There are about 4 or 5 episodes in right now, and this is not a spoiler because it's in the trailers, but I play the mother of 2 girls. They're really the stars of the show who go missing. I do that a fair bit. Mothers of children who go missing. All my kids go missing. So anyway, but it's a great show. It's interesting, and it's the pursuit to find the kids and all that kind of jazz.
Awesome. Any final words about Hunter x Hunter and why people should be excited to check it out this Friday?
I think people should be excited to check it out because it's just like a jaw-dropping movie. It's like once you get in there, you're just stuck to your seat and go on this roller coaster, and then it just leaves you floored.
I can attest to that. Fantastic, fantastic. Kevin, what are you working on right now?
I'm just wrapping up work on another thriller. This one's called House on Fire, and it should be airing sometime in the spring. And without giving away too much, it's kind of about a mother's slow descent into madness.
Titillating.
So I'm staying in the dark place right now.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, any final words about Hunter x Hunter, your experience scoring the film, and anything you want people to know going in? Like Shawn said, if you're able to avoid the trailer, because it's a hell of a good experience. It's a beautiful film. It's got everything that you want and need in a film, and just live the experience. It'll stay with you. It will for quite some time. Thank you so much. Greg,
Yep.
what are you working on these days?
Unfortunately, not much. I was supposed to shoot another feature, but it got canceled because of COVID. So everything is on pause for till next year. But probably, I mean, hopefully a lot of projects coming down the pipe. A few other indie features for sure. And maybe a big one. Who knows? I can't say more.
Fantastic. Any final thoughts about Hunter x Hunter releasing this Friday?
Yeah, I would say dive in this movie and just wet till the final punch, because it's definitely worth it.
It definitely is. Shawn, what are you up to these days? Or is it all just focusing on the release?
Yeah, we're in COVID lockdown. I'm just playing with my cat.
There you go. Good times,
Yeah.
good times.
The future, it'll depend on how COVID shakes out for the next year, but hopefully next summer, both Greg and I will be shooting on a desert island.
Fantastic. Sounds fun. You gonna write me a little cameo so I mean, guys with dreadlocks, desert island,
Actually,
it's got like 4 characters, so unless you want to be like a starfish or something, I think you're out of luck.
Ooh, tempting. I'm so glad that you all were able to come out, and I'm so glad I got to spend an extra 30 minutes with you guys in Tech Check. You told so many great stories about the film, Shawn. I wish people had been able to be a fly on the wall, been privy to some of those conversations. I just kind of want to let you take us out. I mean, what do you want to tell us about the film? Tell us whatever you want to tell us about this film that's over a decade in the making that I think is going to blow people's minds.
It was a long labor of love, and I had, as you can clearly see, tons of really super ultra talented help. It could have gone way worse than I feared it would. I'm just really, I'm very thankful right now of, as the movie's about to be released, of all of the people who took part in it and had and did like a lot of work that I don't know if I would have had the strength to do if it weren't something that came from me. So I'm really thankful of all of that right now. But in terms of viewers, I just, I hope that people like it enough that that it'll have them talking, and I hope it's an hour and a half well spent. It's nasty, brutish, and short, and it all drives to a certain point that is I hope people will find significance.
People will be talking about that last scene for hours. Look, 2020 was a year that none of us could have expected or prepared for, and there were a lot of big films that we were all looking forward to in January that got pulled. That doesn't mean it wasn't an incredible year for horror. This is a really incredible film. It's so powerful and so of its own, non-traditional in some ways, but very primal and visceral on other levels. You can't have a conversation about the best horror movies of 2020 until you've seen Hunter x Hunter. I'm just telling you that straight up. So you need to check this film out when it's released this Friday, December 18th. It's really a fantastic experience, and I can't wait until it's till it's been seen, so that we can really dive into some of the elements of this film that simply can't be spoiled, that simply must be experienced before they're talked about. See this film, everybody. Hunter x Hunter. It's fantastic. Once again, I want to thank everyone who came out, the creatives behind Hunter x Hunter, releasing this Friday. I want to thank my entire team at Dread Central for helping with this event. Thanks for doing tech. Thanks to IFC Midnight for putting out this incredible film. I can't wait for everyone to check it out. Once again, this has been Dissecting Horror, Hunter x Hunter, this Friday. Good night, everyone.
Good night.